Hi everyone, this is Amol Shete, and in this particular tutorial, we will understand about how to build a custom Docker image. Now, previously we had one session in which we talked about the basics of the Docker image. This session is about how to build a Docker image. So this is going to be the Docker series. So if you want to learn more about it, please do subscribe my channel. And in this particular tutorial, we will talk about what is a Docker image first. Then we will understand about the Docker workflow. Then third thing we will talk about that what is meant by Dockerfile. Okay, so Dockerfile is required to build a custom Docker image. So we will understand that there are various instructions that you should be knowing. Then there is one favorite interview question around the Docker is CMD versus entry point. Okay, so what is different between CMD and entry point? We will talk about that. Then finally we will build a Docker image. Now there is first of all we'll understand how to build a basic Docker image, and then we will understand the best practices with which we can build a Docker image. So all of these things we are going to see in entire this particular video. So watch the full video for having the complete understanding. So let's get started. So the very first thing we will discuss here, that is what is mean by the Docker image. So Docker image is something you can consider like it's a standalone software package that we have, in which we have everything to run a one particular software. So whatever you required to run one software, like environment and the artifacts of your application, so you will keep it inside one particular package, and that's what you can run it on any of the platform. Okay, so that's what the Docker image is. Now you will get more idea on what is meant by Docker image and how to create it. Okay, so for that we will, as we work, we will make a progress, you will come to know about Docker image. So before that, I am interested here to talk about the workflow of the developer. So what is the workflow we have? Okay, so let's say you have a developer. So here you have a developer. Now that developer is writing. Okay, the developer is going to write the code on his laptop. Okay, so whenever he's writing the code, he is going to push that code to some place, storage of code. Okay, it could be something like a GitHub. So let's consider here in this example that your developer is storing the code inside a GitHub. Now once we have the code available, this developer is storing the code inside a GitHub. Further, every single time we would like to build a Docker image out of it. Okay, so at this point, once as soon as your developer pushes the code here, so by doing something like a CI/CD process or some other processes or manual process, we will take the code and we will build it. Okay, we will build the code. And now building the code means that compilation, doing process of compilation and downloading all the dependency whichever we required. Now after doing all of this, we will get an artifact. Okay, we'll get an artifact. Now that artifact, we're supposed to keep it inside the Docker image. So we'll see that how to build a custom Docker image. So I can say here that either I'll directly go for building the Docker image, or I can simply build the application first and then I'll copy the artifact inside the Docker image. Okay, anything is fine, but at this moment I'm just mentioning something like a build process that which we have to do. Now once we got the build process, okay, once we done through the build process, so we get artifact, and then this artifact we can either copy inside. So we can say here building the Docker image is going to be the next process. So here we will build a Docker image. Now once we are done with the building Docker image, then finally we can push that Docker image to some repository. Okay, so in the previous case also, previous video, we also discussed about how to push. So here also one more time we will push the Docker image. So that's what we will do. Okay, so push that Docker image to something like a Docker Hub repository, and then finally we can run that application whichever the server you would like to run. Okay, so you can say deploying of the Docker image, or you can run that application, that is Docker image, on the server. So this is going to be the workflow which we are going to discuss today. Okay, so here just try to understand the workflow that every single time as soon as your developer is building or like pushing the code to the GitHub, we will be taking the latest code, and from that latest code we will be building the Docker image out of it. Okay, and that's the reason here, because this process which we have to do it manually again and again, that's the reason we here probably we might be doing some CI/CD setup in real time. In today's scenario, we will do it with just a manual step. Okay, so if you know the manual steps, you can automate that in later stage. Okay, so let's get started to understand or to do this particular workflow. Now, to do this workflow, what I have done is I have already one Docker server running. So in the previous session, you guys have seen that I have created one Docker server. Now, if you want to understand like how to create Docker server, you may watch part 1 of this session series. Okay, you should get that in my playlist. Now, this particular server which is running, which is created, and it's a T2 medium server that I have created. And in this particular server, I have the already the Docker installed. Okay, so I'm not going to install Docker again today. And with which key pair I have created, so it's a demo Linux key. So let me log into the server, and here we go. So we have successfully logged into the server, and now it's time to check the Docker version. So if I check my Docker version, so I can access the Docker with this particular command, right? So Docker is already installed, and it's time to understand first of all about the Docker file. Now here, if I show you what's the next thing we're going to discuss is what is meant by Dockerfile. Okay, so the very first thing you need to understand here, that is Dockerfile, because without Dockerfile you cannot understand how to build a Docker image. So let's say, what is Dockerfile? Okay, what is meant by the Dockerfile? So whenever you have to create the custom Docker image, so every single time you need to write a Docker file. So whenever you have to create a custom Docker image, so in such case, you need to write a Docker file. So Docker file is like a script. Okay, Docker file is like a script. So on your laptop, you are going to write this particular script in which we are going to mention a few commands, okay, few instructions, such as how you would like to build a Docker image. Okay, what are things you would like to copy, whether you would like to build the application inside your Docker image, and everything we are going to mention here, the steps that how you would like to build a Docker image, and that script we called as a Docker file. And once the Docker file writing is done, then further we are going to build a Docker image out of this particular Docker file. So you need to write a Docker file first, and then you can create the Docker image out of it. Okay, so as we have understood here that we have to write something called as Docker file. So what are those instructions are? Okay, so that those we can get it on internet. Okay, so if I just go on a browser and if I search something like, let's say, Docker file, if I just search something like a Docker file, I'm getting something, the official document, the very first link, and these are the instructions that we have. Okay, these are the instructions which we have, which are not at all difficult to understand, but let's understand one by one, and not all the things we required to have a the understanding. The few of the basics and important one we are going to discuss in today's class. So the very first instructions, we have something like a add. Okay, so here you can add the local or remote files or directories. Okay, so you can imagine that you have you have a host server, right? So you have a server here, and on top of that you are going to clone the code from the GitHub. So your developer has pushed the code to GitHub, so that code you are going to clone it here. Now once the code is cloned here, okay, along with that you will also write one Docker file. Now the Docker file, inside that you are going to mention this add command, that if you wish to copy something, so of course you need to copy your source code or artifact. So in such cases you can add these instructions. Okay, so add command, and you have one more command, that which is copy. So they have a lot of similarity actually, add and copy, but copy is with the help of copy you can just copy your local files from your host server to the Docker image. Okay, so that is possible with the copy command. And with the add, you can even copy the remote file. So let's say on HTTPS URL you have some file, or so in such case you can use the add command. Okay, so that's about the difference between the add and copy, and this is also one of the popular question the interview might ask you. Okay, then if you are passing any arguments, so you can pass it. So while running your Docker command, you may change those arguments. So that's something variabilization you can do. So maybe this is something advanced, maybe not needed for, at least for today's example. You have one more question, like one of the very important instructions, that is which is CMD and the entry point. Okay, and this is also one of the popular questions, so we are going to discuss that in few minutes. Before than that, let's understand what is the similarity that they have, CMD and entry point. So they are both they are both responsible to run your startup command. Okay, so your container required one of the process. Okay, your container requires at least one of the process to be running all the time, and in such case we are going to make sure that CMD or entry point is going to be the actual command of your application. Okay, let's say you have a Java application, so you run the application, Java application, with the java hyphen jar and your jar file name. Okay, so that's what your Java application, that's how you run the Java application. Okay, so this is going to be the CMD and entry point. Now like whatever here I'm telling you as an instruction, so those are going to, we are going to perform. Okay, so be relaxed at this point. I'm just like explaining the theory, and once I started doing this with the practical example, you will come to know what the CMD and entry point is. So here either you can mention the CMD or entry point or both together, or depending on your use case you do it. So difference I'll come to at that point, but at this point just understand that CMD and entry point, they have common what, they both are responsible to provide the startup command. Now once we have understood the CMD and entry point, further you can set up any of the environment variable if you wish to, on which particular port your container is running, if you wish to expose that application. Okay, like on which ports your application is listening, so expose command is for that. And the very first initial statement you are always going to write, which is the from. Okay, so your Docker file is going to start with this from, which is where you are going to mention your base image. Okay, so on top of the base image only you are going to mention the next step. So this is really important instructions that we have. So from is the very first statement of a, is going to be, then health check to check the health status of your container. Label is to, you can add some metadata in maintainer, in which you can write the some of the instructions, like who is the author of this image and everything. So these are the few things you have, but very important one, let's discuss the run. Now if you wish to execute any of the command inside the Docker image, okay, so like let's say you take base image something, let's say Ubuntu or anything like that, and further you wish to install anything, so you can write run, and after that you can mention that what exactly you would like to like put the command. Okay, so run, and after that you can put some Linux command depending on which particular your base image is. So you can just execute the commands here. Okay, so that's one thing is about the run. Then further you have a user, so let's say you would like to do a certain task with a particular user, you can mention that. You can create the volumes, you can mention the volumes, and so volume is something we are going to discuss in the fourth part of this series, where volume and storages we are going to discuss about. And then we have one work dir. Okay, so we can mention that working directly, so everything that you would like to happen on a particular path, so that is a work dir you have. So these are the all instructions you have. Now we are going to use these instructions to create the Docker image. Okay, so let's go and understand how we are going to utilize these all instructions. So the very first thing, I have a Docker project here, and this you should get it in my GitHub repository. I'll put the link in the description. So if you wish to practice this project, you should get my GitHub link. Now further, what I'm going to do, I'm going to clone this particular code on my server. Okay, so I do have one server running here, and I don't have that anything here at this moment. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to clone this code simply. So I'll take this code. Here we have the HTTPS URL. I'll just copy, clone this code. Okay, and yeah, I'll paste. Okay, so before cloning, what's the command for git clone? It's a git clone and your URL. So I'm cloning this URL. I'm cloning this GitHub code. I'm done with the cloning. Okay, and now this is a public repository, so you need to choose the HTTPS URL so that you should be able to clone it. Now we are done with the cloning part, and yes, this is what the project Docker project we have now. Okay, now it's time to build this application. Okay, now let me tell you, this application is the Java based project. And if I go inside this particular Docker project, so I already have the Docker file written. Okay, so if I check how my Docker file look like, so this is how my Docker file look like. So now this Docker file is having the very first statement, which is a from. Okay, now what I'm doing here is that I do have one this Java project. Okay, I do have this Java project, and inside this Java project I have already written one Docker file. Now this Docker file is telling me that I'll be choosing one base image. Now which base image here I've chosen? It is the OpenJDK base image. Okay, now why OpenJDK? Okay, so let's understand that. So as I already mentioned, this is the Java project. Okay, the project which we have here, this is the Java project, and because it is a Java project, I will require at last I will require a Java environments to run this particular application. And that's the reason I have chosen here the OpenJDK, which is going to provide me the Java environment. Now before that, the next command here, you need to understand one process, that have we built the application? Okay, have we built the application? So that's one of the biggest question we have right now. So the answer is no. Okay, we have not built application, we need to build application. Okay, now building the application means that here we are going to use one tool, a build tool called as Maven. And with the help of Maven tool, we will first of all build application, then we will get something called as the jar file. Okay, so this is the artifact we will get it. Artifact is nothing but the executable file. So right now we don't have that build. Okay, to get the build, first of all we will build this particular code. Okay, we will build this particular code. Now once we are done, so we need to build this particular code. Now once we are done with the building of this application, then we will get one jar file under the target directory. Okay, and that's what we are going to copy. So let's do it one step by step. Okay, so first of all, so here if I explain you on the whiteboard, so what the next step we are going to do, we have this Docker server. Inside this Docker server, we are going to install the Maven tool. Okay, now once we have Maven tool, so with the help of this Maven tool, we are going to build application, and for that I'm going to use the command called as mvn install. So that's what we are going to do. So let's go ahead and use this command. Okay, first of all, I don't have a Maven install, and to do the Maven installation, I'll say apt get update and apt get install Maven. Okay, so let's install the Maven, and I'll put the -y, so auto approval here I'm giving. So let's install the Maven here first of all, and it's going to take some time, so let's wait. So here the Maven installation is done, and now if you see that in which directory I'm inside the Docker project. Okay, and here I shall find one pom.xml file. Now this is the file in which we have declared the dependency, and that's the reason from this path, okay, where this file belongs. Okay, from this path I'm going to execute the command, that is mvn install. Now what this command is going to do, this command is going to download the dependencies, and this is also going to build application. Okay, so let's put this command and wait for some time. Now here at this point you can see that we're done with the building of this application. I mean the build success message, we have got it. So after putting that so mvn install, okay, we are done with the build success. We have received this build success message, and total duration it takes somewhere around 3.5 minutes. Okay, so we are done with the building of this application, and do remember one thing, that I have considered a T2 medium machine. Okay, so if you are trying to do this project on T2 micro machine, so probably it might not work. And the reason this machine requires this project requires little more CPU. Okay, so at this point you can see the build success message we have received. And if I check the ls command, you can see that inside this target folder, like this target folder wasn't present earlier. Okay, now this folder we have got it. So if I go and check the target folder, inside this you should find that we have got this jar file. Now this is what we say artifact in case of jar file. Okay, now this jar file we were looking for. Now we have got it, the jar file, and this jar file normally, okay, let's say if I wish to run the application traditionally, I can just run this way. Okay, I can say java-jar, and this is the way I can run the Java application. But that's not our goal today. Is okay, we wish to build a Docker image, and there are a lot of benefits we get in case of Docker image. That's the reason I need to convert. I don't want to go with this traditional way. So I don't want to run my application with this way. Rather, I would like to go with the with the Docker ways. Okay, so I have to Dockerize this one, and how I can do that now. So you can see here we have this Docker file written already. So if I check the Docker file, you can see that here the from statement is indicating that I'm going to choose a Java environment to run this application. The next thing, I'm using the copy. Okay, and then we have here the target folder. So from the target folder, we are basically copying that Spring Pay Clinic this jar file to the slash location. Okay, so that's what we are doing. We will be taking and copying the file from this to this location inside the Docker image. Okay, so whenever you write a copy command, so first thing what you write is your source, and that's your destination. Okay, now once you have written this, further what you can do is you're saying here expose. So my application will be running on 8080 port because this is the Java application. So it is going to run on 8080. So I'm just exposing it on 8080 port. And finally here I'm going to say CMD, which is where I'm going to mention the startup command. And inside the startup command, like what is my startup command is going to be. So I'm going to run the Java application, right? So java-jar, and that's my jar file. So with this way, I'll be running the application. So let's go ahead and so that's how I'll be writing the Docker file. So I'm done writing the Docker file. Okay, just assume that I'm done writing Docker file and it's time to build a Docker image. Now before going ahead and building the Docker image, I want to discuss about one more topic here, which is the CMD and Entrypoint. Okay, so you guys can see that we have the CMD written here. Okay, now so what is the difference between CMD? So can I write the entry point here instead of CMD? Can I write the entry point? The answer is yes. Okay, so there as such you don't find the difference for this application, at least, because we have the startup command like java-jar and then sprint clinic. That's a jar file we have. Then what's the difference between the CMD and entry point? Okay, so in this case my startup command is java-jar and then jar file. Okay, but let's say in few of the cases, okay, you might have some of the arguments along with this particular command. Okay, so like java-jar, then here you have a jar file, and along with that you might have few of the arguments where something like a environment variable or some of the things. Okay, now if you have such thing, okay, if you have some of the environment variable or some arguments and you wish to change those arguments at the runtime, okay, so in such case you can use the CMD. In such case you can use the CMD. So what's the benefit we get there? So if you are using the CMD in such case, so CMD is going to allow you to alter the arguments at the runtime. Okay, CMD is going to allow you to alter the argument. So if you have argument, in our case we don't have arguments, but if you have arguments, so those arguments you can just alter it in case of CMD. Now if you have an entry point instead of that, okay, so here if you have an entry point and you have mentioned if you have the arguments ahead after this command, so that in entry point you cannot alter the arguments at the runtime. Okay, so this is the difference you have. You can use here the CMD or entry point for this example, at least. Okay, there is no as such difference you will find, because CMD and entry point both are going to provide you the startup command, and that's the reason this is favorite interview question, that they have a lot of similarity. Like you can use either the CMD or entry point. Then what's the difference you have? So difference is that CMD and entry point both are used for startup command, but in case of CMD you can override the arguments while running the container. At that time you can alter it. Okay, so when you say docker run, and we can pass some -e and some environment variable. So let's say you wish to change argument, so you can make it happen. But in case of entry point, the alteration is not possible. Okay, so that's what we have. Or you can use the CMD and Entrypoint together. So most likely in such case you put the this particular portion for the your entry point, and then whichever the arguments you have, so you put that arguments along with the CMD. Okay, so here you write the entry point, and then after that the next line you write the CMD, and then whichever the arguments you have, you can pass those. So that's a major difference you have between CMD and entry point. And now here you are done writing the Docker file, and it's time to build a Docker image. Okay, so how you can build it? So we have a Docker build command for that, and I can say Docker build and -t for mentioning the tag name for my Docker image. Okay, so what is the name you would like to give for your Docker image? So let's say it's something like a Spring Pet Clinic, and that's the name I would like to give. Any of the version you would like to give the image version, so let's say it's a v1.1. okay, so that's the version we would like to give. And where is the Docker file? Okay, so Docker file is present on the same location. So you can see here we have the Docker file. So I'm gonna say dot. Now dot is gonna tell that on the same location you should find a Docker file. So just press enter, and now one step by step it is going to follow the instructions that first of all it is going to download this particular image, then the next step and next step, like that every single step action will happen, and at last I shall get the Docker image here. So let's wait for that. And with the creating the Docker image, and if I check now Docker images command, I shall find here we have got the Docker image. Okay, so we have got the Docker image here. Great. So we are done with the creating the Docker image, and now that's I can say the basic way with which we have created the Docker image. But there were a lot of manual steps here I had done. Okay, like Maven wasn't there, so I installed the Maven, then I put the mvn install command. So these were the few of the manual commands I put. But in in a production environment, we might be looking for something the extended version of it, that something we have called as a multi-stage Docker image. Okay, so multi-stage Docker image is the advanced way you can consider for building your Docker image, in which I don't want to do this manual steps. Okay, I don't want to do this manual step. Now you can say that okay, so let's say I just use install the Maven here, and I put the mvn install command. So these were the two manual steps if I put. Okay, so you can argue with me and say that so let's say at this point we had one Docker file, and there I talked about something called as the run command, right? I can use something like a run command, and with the run command I can put this command, right? Let's say I wasn't having the Maven, so I can say apt get install Maven, then I can say run mvn install. So I can use this command, but the problem with this command is that whenever I'll get the output at last, okay, whenever I'll get the output at last of the Docker image, so that would be that Docker image. Okay, so right now if I check the Docker image, it is around a 707 MB. Okay, so if I just go ahead and create the Docker image by installing the Maven, and further if I say mvn install, so mvn install is going to install the dependencies, and that's how I will get the artifact. So I don't want everything here. Okay, what I want is probably I'm just looking for this jar file. Okay, so I even in fact I have not copied here the source code. Okay, so I haven't copied even the source code here inside this image, because I don't want that. Okay, what I want is I just want this particular thing. Okay, I just want the jar file, which is the artifact. So I want to keep the image lightweight. Okay, and I also want to have automation. I just don't want to install all of this thing inside the last image, the output image. So this is the place where I can utilize the Docker multi-stage. Okay, now that's the way we follow in the production environment. Every in a real-time scenarios, we build the image with the multi-stage. So how to do that? Okay, so how we can do is I have written already a Dockerfile multi-stage. So let's see what I have written there. So here you guys can see that I have opened this Dockerfile multi-stage file, and within that what I can see is we have taken the Maven as the first image. Okay, so Maven as a base image, and then further what I'm going to do is I'm going to consider that Maven image as the build. Okay, now this name is your choice, what name you would like to give, but it has some importance. Okay, you'll come to know ahead. But from, so this maven as a base image I'm considering as the build image. Okay, so that's, the name is your choice. Now here the next thing what I'm using is the work dir. Okay, so work dir is basically that what is going to be my working directory. Okay, so I'm just mentioning that. So it's up to you that what work directory you would like to mention. So if that this directory doesn't exist, okay, then this directory will get created. So every single command will get executed on this particular work directory. So I'm saying work directory is going to be the user/app. Now further what I'm doing is I'm copying the code. Okay, so I'm going to copy this whole source code. So where my Docker file multistage exists, okay, so on this path. So here whichever the files you see, all those files will get copied. So with this command, that is copy dot. Okay, dot means here. So whatever is present on that location, so that's my source, and destination will be the /user/app. So inside this location I should find all the source code. Okay, so I'm copying the whole source code. And why I'm doing that, because I wish to build the application, and here I'm gonna say run mvn install. So finally here with this command we are going to build the application inside the Docker image itself. Okay, now previously in previous case we did execution of this machine on the host machine, but here while building the Docker image I would like to do this operation. I don't want to do it manually. Okay, further here you can see I have considered now other base image. Okay, so from statement here I've written, and in the other state other base image I'm again choosing the OpenJDK environment which we will require to run the application. Okay, and here again I'm considering some work dir environment which is the same. So for this other image I'm again mentioning the work dir, and this is the most important command here we have, guys. Okay, so in previous example and this example, this is what the difference we have, which is acting which is making us creating the multi-stage image. So what we are doing here is that I'm saying from build. Okay, so you can see here this build word, right? So whatever the word here you are mentioning as, that you need to mention it here. Okay, so this and this has to be same. So I'm saying from this previous image just copy this particular artifact. Okay, so from this image just copy this, from this image just copy this particular artifact and paste it on the inside this image. Okay, on the location that is user/app, and I have already declared that work directory is going to be the user/app. Then finally I'm exposing this on 8080 port, and I'm just using the same command here as a CMD. So this is going to be the multi-stage. So what's the major difference here? We have this copy command. Okay, so base image in which I'll be building out the things, whatever the stuff I would like to do, the unnecessary stuff I'll be just doing it here, and at last I'll just take the cream of that, okay, artifact here in the next image, which is the required thing, and that's how I'll be building this image. Okay, so now at this point what I'm going to do, I'm just going to build this image as well. So just say docker build -t, and what's the name, next image name we would like to give? So it's again the spring pet cleaning, and this time I will give the version, let's say clinic. Okay, so version here I'll give, let's say v1.2. Okay, so I'm just changing the version here, and where is my Docker file? Okay, so Docker file is present on the same location, but it is present at the same location, but this time your Docker file name is something different. Okay, so it's not just a Docker file, it is a Docker file -multistage, and that's the reason you are going to mention it like this way, -f, that's file, and what's that file name is, so this is the file name, and where that file is located, so it is present at the same location, so I'm gonna say dot. So this is going to be the complete command to build a Docker image. So just press enter, and I'm just building the Docker image now with some other way, and step by step here. First of all, the Docker image, okay, Docker image will get built in such a way that maven, the maven image will get downloaded from Docker up, the base image. Then further we are going to copy the source code inside the Docker image, and then at last what I'm doing here in this image is I'm going to build the application. Then further, once the application building is done, we will take this Java image, okay, JDK image, and then we will be copying the artifact from previous image to this image, and then that's how we will be creating your Docker image. Okay, so let's wait. So here you can see the mvn install is going inside while building the Docker image itself. We are building the application. Okay, so let's wait for some time. It is going to take some time. Now here you can see when I put the Docker images command, so I can see the 1.2 image is also available, and this got created few seconds back. So that's how I'm done creating the one more image here that was with the multi-stage. Okay, and here you can see the size is same. Okay, so here exactly what I'm doing is I'm doing the almost same step. The content of that Docker file, the new Docker image, is just having the artifact and the base image. So that's how I've created this image, and if you really wish to run the Docker image now, you can go ahead and run it. Okay, so if I just say Docker run, then I can use -d to run the Docker image in detach mode, -p to just say the Docker image on port 80. But my application is running on port 8080, so the target port, the container port, is going to be the 8080. And what's my Docker image name? You can just take any of the Docker image here. So it's your choice. So this is Spring Pet Clinic, and v1 dot 1 or 2. Okay, it's your choice what name you'd like to take. Anything is fine. So that's my Docker image name. Okay, so this is the Docker image name. Then here is the tag, and with this way I should be able to run my Docker image. So let's go ahead and test it. So here you see that we got some string, and if I check the Docker ps command, we have the application which has just started now. So I am interested here to check the result of this application. So I have exposed this particular application on port 80. Okay, so this port forwarding also we have discussed in the previous session. So if you haven't watched, okay, you may go and just watch that there. Okay, so now I'm curious here to see the results. So I can go back on the instances. That's my public IP. So one more thing, I should open the port 80 for this Docker server. So I'll go and open the port 80, because by default the port 80 is restricted, only port 22 is allowed. So I will open the port 80, edit inbound rule, and here we'll say add rule. Okay, and here I'm going to open the HTTP port. So let's open the port 80, and I'm opening it for all the people. So I have saved the rule, and it's time to test out it. Let's take the public IP and paste it in the browser to check whether you see the application or not. Okay, and here we go. So we can see that application is working absolutely fine, and that's how we have created. So all of these topics we have covered here, okay, in this particular session. Now in the next series, we are going to discuss about storages and volume and Docker Compose. Okay, so stay tuned and subscribe to my channel for the more Docker content. See you there in the next class.